Pete Buttigieg is being dishonest about what his healthcare plan would do. And at the same time, his healthcare plan contradicts what he said himself about healthcare back in April. So in this video, I'm going to break down what his healthcare plan actually is. I'm going to show you his previous comments about healthcare back in April. And after all this, I think it's going to become clear that Pete Buttigieg is not an honest actor. So first up here, let me show you this clip from this past weekend where Buttigieg was on ABC's This Week.
This my way or the highway idea that either you're for kicking everybody off their private plans in 4 years or you're for business as usual, it's just not true. I'm proposing Medicare for all who want it. Now, if we do that, that's the biggest change in American healthcare in 50 years. The difference is the way I would do it, you get to keep your private plan if you want to. I trust you to make that decision. Look, I think it could very well be the long-run destination, but I think there's got to be some humility in our policy here. Let's put this out there and see if it's really the best plan for everybody. I think it will be the best plan, but I'm not willing to assume that it is the right plan for you out of Washington and order you to take it whether you want to or not. If it's the right plan, then everybody will move to it until it is the single payer.
All right. Up front here, I got to give Mayor Pete some props. The man is slick. He knows how to sell an idea, even though he's being completely disingenuous while doing it. If you don't know the details and you don't really understand how healthcare works, and maybe you're not from a country like I am of Canada, where we have a single payer system, you might buy this BS. I think it's going to be effective on a lot of people, unless you know the actual details of what his plan really is. So first, let's get to some of his comments here. He says this idea of it's my way or the highway. Oh, Medicare for all, or you can't have anything at all. This is so dishonest because there is a built-in assumption of what he's saying here, my way or the highway, that the built-in assumption is that his way, his plan of Medicare for those who want it, that the Medicare in his plan is the exact same Medicare as in Medicare for all that Bernie Sanders or Warren is offering, when it's not. So this is all just political theater here. His plan is actually a public option. Medicare for those who want it is a fancy way of saying public option. That's what it is. Now, this piece from the Charlotte Observer, written by retired neurosurgeon George Baumfalk, summarizes the differences between a public option and a single-payer system, I think, best. The big solvable issue in our healthcare system is the 30% of every healthcare dollar that is squandered on administrative overhead, paperwork, the pre-approvals, denials, and appeals that are an integral part of myriad for-profit private insurance companies. That's around $1 trillion every year. Only a single-payer system like Medicare for All can cut that $1 trillion in half by eliminating the bureaucratic waste. That half, $500 billion, can be redirected to providing comprehensive health care to all Americans. It's not free. We'll all pay for it in taxes, which for most of us will be less than what we are currently spending on premiums, copays, deductibles, and other healthcare expenses. We'll pay less in the end for more health care for everyone. A public option cannot save that $500 billion, nor can it reduce healthcare costs. It will only add one more choice of insurance provider to the current complex mix. Most of us neither know nor care which company provides our insurance. The choice we really care about is choice of doctors and hospitals. Most private insurers restrict that choice to maximize profits. They also restrict our access to health care by imposing deductibles and copays, which many of us can't afford. Medicare for All offers free choice of doctors and hospitals with no deductibles and copays. What more choice can anyone want? The other fatal flaw in a public option is that it will likely become the insurer of last resort to the sickest and oldest among us. The insurance playing field will be anything but level. As deficient as they are, for-profit insurers will cleverly market themselves to the young and healthy, leaving those who use more health care to the public option. Its costs will balloon, dooming it to fail, to the delight of for-profit companies. So, by making Medicare an option, by making Medicare for all an option, instead of actually making it the single-payer system that it should be, you are dooming it to fail. This is what Pete Buttigieg is not telling you. The idea that, oh, well, we'll just put these two out there. We'll put Medicare for all out there and your private insurance out there, and you have the choice. I mean, they're both working independently. They'll both act exactly the same as they would under each individual system. Not true. Medicare for all works because everybody would be on the same plan, including your Congress people and the wealthiest people in the country. Now, if your Congress people and the wealthiest people in the country are on the same healthcare plan as you, there's a better chance that healthcare plan, Medicare for all, is actually going to be successful. But if you create a scenario where these private companies can offset all the sick people onto the public option, onto the Medicare choice that Pete Buttigieg is giving you, then that drains the public option of resources and continues making profits for the private insurance companies. So Pete Buttigieg's plan of Medicare for all who want it is inherently deceptive, because the Medicare for all in his Medicare for all who want it is not the same Medicare for all that Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren would be offering, because it would not be a single payer plan. Now, another piece here, just from that interview, because this is another political speak that he's using to be deceptive, saying, my plan would be the biggest change in American healthcare in 50 years. This is like, he's acting like change is good for change's sake. No, moving to a Medicare for all system is necessary to get people off of these for-profit insurers and into a healthcare system that will actually take care of them. So it doesn't matter whose plan changes more or not. And I mean, it's obvious the Medicare for all system would be a bigger change than his plan, but we're not even having that conversation. Who cares? Who cares about the level of change? It's about what the change actually means. But again, this is more political speak from Pete Buttigieg. And by the way, I'm not the only one here saying that Buttigieg's plan is horrible. Obviously, I read you that piece from that retired neurosurgeon, but there's many more pieces breaking down how the public option is not the same as a Medicare for all system and is not enough. So here are some headlines here. This from Current Affairs. Why a public option isn't enough. This from Bangor Daily News. Public option plans won't fix American healthcare system. This from the New Republic. Pete Buttigieg's healthcare plan is the worst yet. Short on details and long on naivete, the South Bend mayor aims to leave the status quo unruffled. And the fact is, Pete Buttigieg himself knows that he is being dishonest. Here is what he had to say about healthcare during an interview with Ezra Klein at Vox back in April.
You know, the right did a pretty good job of shifting the basic terms of the debate rightward over the last 30 or 40 years. In fact, the ACA itself is a good example, right? So, in the 70s, you got people like Richard Nixon talking about basically universal basic income by a different name. By the Obama years, we're doing a basically conservative tweak to our healthcare system that is characterized by the right as sort of dangerously leftist.
Well, it looks a lot like Nixon's plan, actually.
Yeah, and cooked up in the Heritage Foundation and piloted by a Republican governor. And what's funny is, single payer, which is very much a compromised position between nationalized medicine and fully private payer and provider, right? A system where you have a public payer but a private provider. That's the middle ground. And only now are we even beginning to talk about it as something Democrats can embrace, let alone something that we would consider centrist, while the majority of the American people actually think it's a good idea.
I mean, what else is there to say? Pete Buttigieg himself acknowledging that the majority of the American people think a single-payer system is a good idea. He's right. Back in April, everything he said there was 100% correct. Medicare for all is the compromise, because it is not a national healthcare system like you have in the UK, where doctors and nurses in hospitals are actually employees of the state. That's not what a Medicare for all system is. A Medicare for all system puts everybody onto the same onto a single payer plan, and that plan, that system then bills the government, and that's how it works. So Medicare for all is the compromise here. I mean, if you support this guy, at least acknowledge he's not being honest with you. He's not being honest with what his plan actually is. Medicare for all, for those who want it, is actually a public option. And be honest with the fact that he himself recognizes that the majority of the people want Medicare for all. So ask yourself, why has he taken this position? Well, how about this from Alex Koch at Sludge? As he attacks Medicare for All, Mayor Pete gets campaign cash from healthcare executives. Buttigieg's recent transformation into explicit Medicare for All critic was accompanied by continued donations from pharmaceutical and health insurance interests. Pharmaceutical, health insurance, and hospital industry donors have flocked to Mayor Pete all year. As of mid-2019, he was second only to Donald Trump in overall campaign cash from donors in the health sector. Among Democratic candidates, he was second to former Vice President Joe Biden in terms of pharmaceutical and health insurance donations. A Sludge review of Buttigieg's recent third quarter campaign finance report shows that as he rails against Medicare for All, executives and other managers in the health sector have kept the money flowing. So Pete Buttigieg is propped up by corporate money from the healthcare industry, second only to Joe Biden and Donald Trump. This is why he is pushing Medicare for those who want it, which again is actually a public option. A public option that is not equal at all to what a single payer Medicare for All system actually is. Again, take this from a Canadian. I live under a system where I never have to think about healthcare ever. It's always there. It's free at the point of use. When I need it, I get it. I have same-day appointments with my doctor. If I feel sick in the morning, I make an appointment. I go that same day. I had surgery once. I booked it, got my surgery, went home. That was it. There's no thinking involved in this system. It's one of the biggest selling features of a single-payer system. Because it is free at the point of use, you never have to think about healthcare. When you need it, you get it. What Pete Buttigieg is offering you here is just the same system wrapped up in a pretty bow that doesn't actually fundamentally change anything. And by the way, if you want to look into my sources, I always source everything I use below my video. Check the sources and do your own research. Look into his plan yourself and realize that Pete Buttigieg is not an honest actor.